So, hello and welcome to the International Society for Education Through Arts North American webinar. This year, InSEA celebrates its 70th anniversary, and we are presenting a variety of webinars from all over the world each month. This webinar will focus on AI, higher education, and art, and is presented to you by the North American World Counselors, myself, Dr. Amanda Alexander, and two of my colleagues, Dr. Allan Richards. You want to say hello, Allan?
Hi.
And Dr. Anita Sinner, who unfortunately could not be here with us today. Before we begin, I would like to mention a couple of housekeeping notes. First, please mute your microphones unless you are speaking. Second, we are recording this webinar, and after we finish it in the next few days, it will be posted to InSEA's member space only on our website. And third, if you would like to become a member of InSEA, I will have a slide at the end of this webinar with links to join us. For this webinar, Allan and I plan to use around 30 minutes to ask questions to the panelists without audience participation. At the 30-minute mark, we will open it up for 15 minutes of audience Q&A. And in the meantime, if you would like to add questions in the chat, we can also come back to those during the Q&A. Okay, so I'm going to switch to the next slide real quick, if I can get it to go. Let's see here. So it's now my pleasure to introduce our panelists. So when I read off your bio, maybe make a little wave to everybody. So first is Sherry Mayo, who holds an EDDCT in college teaching of visual arts from Teachers College and an MFA from NYU, who programs curriculum for kids and adults in the Center for Digital Arts at SUNY Westchester Peekskill and teaches in the School of Visual Arts in New York City. So Sherry, just maybe say hi. Second is Isabella, or Isa Obradovich, she is currently a pre-service art and TESOL education student at Miami University of Ohio with a background in all art media. She has 1 million followers on TikTok, 930,000 on YouTube, and 173,000 on Instagram. So hello, Isa. And then third is Glenn Platt. Hold on, who holds a PhD in economics and political economy from Carnegie Mellon and is currently the C. Michael Armstrong Professor of Emerging Technology at Miami University of Ohio. He is also CEO and founder of Lyceum Learning and EdTech AI Tool. Is it tools? Did I miss the S?
No, that's a
Okay,
tool.
okay. Okay. Hi, Glenn.
Singular. You're good. You're
Okay.
covered.
All right, so I am going to unshare my screen because I would like for them to talk a little bit more. So basically the first question to the panelist is, so I would like to give each of you 2 minutes to introduce yourselves more in depth and then tell us how you have come to AI. So I think I'll just go in the order that I introduced you. So Sherry, would you like to go first?
Sure. Thanks, Amanda. I got involved with AI in two ways. First, because I was collaborating with my chairperson, Catherine Rosemond, at School of Visual Arts, and we decided that pre-service art education teachers really needed to become familiar with AI tools. And she charged me with researching them. I teach teaching with technology in art education at SVA. And so we decided to add that to the curriculum. And I embarked on that journey. And so that is now a part of the course's curriculum. As I started learning these AI applications, I also started to research AI in art education and how it was being used. With my other hat, which is directing the Center for the Digital Arts for SUNY Westchester, we decided to also incorporate AI in our curriculum, and we developed an AI certificate for marketing and business. And that then became a mandate by SUNY to develop AI curricula, and we were just ahead of the curve, and we were happy about that. So that's the kind of in both ways, for workforce development and for pre-service art education training, that I got involved with AI. Thank you.
Oh, so I'll go next. Thank you, Amanda.
Sorry, I'm to turn off my mute.
You're
Sorry.
good.
Yes, Isa, you're up next.
So I first came to AI by just being immersed in the online spaces in which a lot of art is being shared all of the time. So naturally, there was a lot of discourse about the ethics of AI and should it be regulated? Should it be used as a tool? Should it be used at all? And then now also as a current college student, I'm in my third year at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. I have seen how my peers use it in class, how professors have attempted to integrate it into the curriculum. And I just find myself having many different conflicting perspectives on how it should be used, whether or not it should be used at all, and what the future of it is.
All right, let's go to Glenn.
Thanks, Amanda. Hey, everybody. Uh, um, so I came to AI really in two different places. I think one is just in my role. My job at Miami as the Armstrong professor is I'm supposed to identify new technologies and prepare the university for what it needs to do to prepare students for what they need to do. And so I'm always thinking, 3 or 4 steps ahead. And so AI kind of got on my radar quite a while ago. And then in a very hands-on way, so colleagues and I were part of a DARPA, it's the Department of Defense kind of think tank, DARPA grant where we were working on a conversational AI chatbot that could play a video game or could play a game. And that's the program that I founded is very game oriented. So that was a big piece of it. But yeah, I mean, I'm your classic early adopter and have been thinking about this for quite a while, and very excited to be here. Thanks.
All right, thank you, you three. Okay, so we'll move on to our first big question. And I'm going to give each of you 2 to 3 minutes. So the first question is, what impact might AI possibly have on higher education going forward? And I'm going to throw this back to Glenn first.
All right. Um, I'm definitely the outlier here. I am not an art educator. I am a futurist, an education futurist, and I am also a techno optimist. So that should give you a sense of a little bit of my bias in this conversation. There's a lot of hyperbole when it comes to tech. People talk, blockchain's going to change the world, and crypto is going to change the world, and I think AI is the first time that hyperbole actually has substance to it. To say it's going to change everything, I think is actually still an understatement. I think it's the biggest shift in our technological landscape since the World Wide Web came around, and I think the impact it will have is far greater than the internet and the World Wide Web is having on society. And I think as teachers, we should be ecstatic about it because at the end of the day, the two things that we want from our students are one, to have them know how to ask really good questions, and two, how to evaluate those answers when they ask those questions. I think at the end of the day, that's what all of education sort of boils down to. And AI is perfectly built for that. Asking good questions is what being a good prompt person is. I don't want to say prompt engineer, it makes it sound too complicated, but how to ask good questions and be able to frame those questions and then how to evaluate those answers and work with them. I mean, that's the bread and butter of what we do. And if we treat AI as a ladder on which we stand and do what we do different, we can start thinking about our job as instructors as being more than regurgitate and memorize and more about how do we then evaluate content and answers and think critically. And I think AI positions us really well for that.
Thank you. So share your Isa, either one of you want to answer the question and or respond to Glenn. We could do it both ways. Answer and respond, maybe.
There you go.
Sherry?
Okay. I think I will start with the bigger idea of AIED, artificial intelligence in education, and some of the broad strokes, which is personalization and customization in education and adaptive learning and the ability to really provide individual learning environments for students' needs, the ability to adapt for differential learning, the ability to create more accessibility through for English language learners through translation, through closed captioning, through speech to text, and that ability to give instant feedback and learning analytics and assessment. And this is all sounds great, and but that tilt towards customization and personalization can go too far, so that we lose sight of standards and core curriculum. There's also a lot of ability to provide predictive analytics and forecasting, the ability to automate grading and course scheduling, and to look at dropout rates and do automatic, admission application and, assessment. Some of these things can be very powerful, but there's also concerns about data privacy and security. Students may not want people to know about their learning styles or their strengths and weaknesses. It might be, a real problem. So, higher ed is going to start using AI between now and 2030, 22% more. And many people say that AI will be the top priority for the next 20 years in higher ed. That if in big systems, AI can bring higher ed to scale rapidly and more efficiently and in a more personalized way. It could also provide adaptability and flexibility and allow teachers to spend less time on, say, grading and more time on human empathetic teaching. That could be a real plus. But those concerns about bias, ethics, security are real.
Thank you, Sherry. Isa, do you have thoughts?
And I'd like to jump in and say, I think that both Glenn and Sherry have very good points about how AI could be used to bolster some of the efforts already ongoing in higher education, but I'm a bit more on the pessimistic side. I think it is very important that if we are to allow this and push this in our curricula in higher education, it's important that we don't use it as or frame it in a way that's a shortcut for student learning. For example, developing paragraphs and building ideas and writing essays. I think that that's a very good skill to have that a lot of my peers have been using AI as a shortcut instead of taking the time to learn to write. I also worry about assessment methods in relation to AI. There was a study from 2023 from Stanford University that did an analysis of how AI detection software looks at native English speaker essays versus TOEFL essays from English language learners, and it found that it unanimously identified 18 of the 91 TOEFL student essays that weren't written with AI as AI generated, and 89 of the 91 or 97% were flagged by at least one of the detectors, while the AI was good at seeing whether or not it was in the native English speaker writing. It was very biased against English language learners in this data set. Of course, there needs to be more studies done on the newer models of this AI detection software, but based on the metrics that the AI systems themselves or the detection systems themselves use, I worry, again, like Sherry said, bias and ethics regarding the use of these tools in the classroom.
Thank you.
I want to I
Go
want to
ahead,
jump
Glenn.
in a bit on this, Amanda, because
Okay.
I mean, I think there's different issues at play here. So, I think Issa's absolutely right. And the bias in these systems, I mean, I think there's two levels of bias. One is just on AI detection, and AI detection just isn't a thing. And anyone who says they're using AI detectors I mean, it's not a thing. It's not a detectable thing. And so I think, though, there's a difference between AI detection bias and AI bias generally. And AI is biased as well, right? Like if you ask an AI tool to give you a picture of 10 CEOs, odds are they're all going to be white men. Um, and so, it's the nature of how AI works. It's using technology. It's basing, right, the training data sets that are used for the major sort of AI frontier models are all using existing data, right? And all that existing data comes with whatever that existing bias is. But by the same token, like I think so. I'm going to use the calculator example. Like when we started to let people use calculators, what we lost was the ability to memorize times tables and memorize multiplication. And it's not that multiplication isn't valuable, but we could do a lot more if we were able to jump into the meat of it, right? And I think that's the power of AI. So when we talk about AI and writing, having AI create an outline or having AI even write a paragraph for you. If what you do is you take that and you turn it in, then you're not using the value of the artificial intelligence. But if you use that as a starting point to say, okay, now how would I write this paragraph given that this paragraph has been handed to me? I mean, if the argument is that we all need to kind of go back and start from scratch, then why let people use computers? Make them write. Don't use spell checkers. Don't use Grammarly. Like at some point, these tools help us do what we do better and faster. And the challenge for educators is that we have to create assignments that force that to happen. So instead of asking people simply to hand in a paragraph, asking them to take a paragraph that had been generated with AI and critically evaluate it and iterate on it and show you each of those steps as they write their papers. So I, I, I guess I disagree about, the notion that it's kind of making us all simple and stupid, that because it lets us do things faster and better.
I want to say something really quick. I have a friend who she codes AI and she's in Silicon Valley, and she and I were just having this conversation. And we basically came to the conclusion that students need to learn how to write and to critically think and then probably use AI, because if you use AI right away, you're never going to really learn how to write or to critically encapsulate your thoughts on paper. And so I think what's happening is because like ChatGPT and these tools are so easy to use, like students are just gravitating towards them so quickly, and they're not really thinking about how they should think about learning to write first and then using the tool as a help, like as a support after they learn those skills, right? I guess like she and I both agreed that that was probably, but how do you get people to actually like do that is the question, I think. Um, so Sherry, do you want to add something to that?
Yes, well, one of the biggest risks is skill loss. We're very vulnerable to skill loss without being able to purposefully use these tools. That's always the issue with technology is purposeful use. You have to be strategic and purposefully use AI in a production pathway so that you are controlling the tool and it's not controlling you. The other big risk is a loss of human connection, that you're so overly reliant on AI to feed you the answer, to give you the instantaneous feedback, to keep feeding you, that you're not socializing and interacting with a teacher, an academic support person, another peer, a peer-to-peer learning situation, that you're going back again and again to the AI, that there's a breakdown of the human to human contact in the learning experience. That is another big risk.
Go ahead, Isa.
I was going to say, I agree with Glenn in that I believe that AI can be used as a way to supplement learning and further our efforts in what we're already trying to do. But as long as the system is structured in a way in which students are able to use AI as a shortcut to bypass the critical thinking and rigorous work that goes into the assignments, which has to do with, I think, the nature of how higher ed is viewed now, but also how the assignments are assessed and how students view sometimes college is just a way to get a piece of paper that'll give you a job. I think that until there's a bit more systemic change that comes across that allows for AI to not just be a shortcut, but to be a way to supplement already existing skills, it's going to be difficult to navigate that in a way that doesn't end up hurting the students in the long run.
Yeah, I think it probably comes down to human behavior, right? Like how do you so there has to be some education about what Sherry's saying, basically, like how do you educate folks on how to use the tool properly, right? Yeah. Okay, do you guys want to move on to our second question? Okay, Alan, I'm gonna let
Yes.
yep.
And I have the second question, and I'm just gonna throw this question out to the panelists and um, see how you respond to it. The question is, do our tools have agency? Can machine co-create with us and make artistic decisions that contribute to the creative process? Who wants to run with that? Okay, sure.
I'll start off with this question. Our tools have been having agency and bits and pieces of AI for quite some time now. That's nothing new. So you have tools in Photoshop, for instance, like object select or content awareness. You have had automated rotoscoping and video editing products, and now you have generative AI or image AI in Photoshop as well. So it's already here. You have AI in most of your software products, and your tools are creating non-human content for you. And so there's pixels in your images, in your video that you didn't make. And so as of 2020 in art education, Leonard had written that it's time for art educators to start creating curriculum with not for the non-human, with non-human content. The time has arrived. When are we going to start dealing with this situation? And he was also recognizing what was happening with tools. So when do we look towards things like new materialism and see that the hierarchy between our tools and ourselves is really flattening, and we start developing curriculum around this and changing the way we are working? And so, we're not going back. These odious tasks of selecting frame by frame, that's gone. Nobody wants to work in CGI that way anymore. So we need to move forward with generative AI, and we need to be mindful that we now have to change our curriculum to reflect this new reality.
I think that the same argument also existed when digital photography emerged, because why would you spend so much time making a painting and making it super hyper realistic when a camera could just capture it in less than a fraction of a second? But I think that there has to be I think that the argument boils down to, where's the line going to be drawn? How much is too much with generative AI, with automating the process? Because there is some value to that. There's some value to I can absolutely see the value of efficiency and of automating things that are just tedious, the odious tasks you mentioned. But at the same time, are we going to place the same emphasis on teaching those foundational skills so that the students know how the back end of it works? My concern is, where is the line drawn, I think.
And I guess I'll bring this back to the theme that I raised, which is this changes our responsibility as instructors, right? That to Issa's point, like I think what it requires us to do is to reflect back on what is the fundamental thing we are trying to teach in that classroom, right? And have we created an experience or an assignment that allows the student to, to exercise that muscle or, identify that thing that we are trying to get them to think harder about or think deeper about. And, so the traditional assignments, which might just simply be production-based assignments, maybe aren't going to do that anymore, right? As these tools start to abstract us away from it. And that's fine. I mean, I think when we went from horse and buggy to car, it changed what we did, but it also made people think differently about what it meant to go from place to place and what was needed to help people identify, what sort of moto location was about. So I really do think the hard part here isn't like, is AI good or bad, or even like, where is that line? I think the hardest part is we have to redesign everything that we've done in the classroom now, because if everything we've done has been heavily predicated on the student creating something and then us evaluating it, that creation process has changed so dramatically now, and that toothpaste is out of the tube, that what we really have to do now is think harder, more about why we had them create that. What is it that we were trying to teach them? To Glenn's point about, pen to paper, right? Like, if there is a piece of it that we think is important, that there's a sensory experience they need to understand, then we have to design our curricula to identify that and build experiences that are built around that. But at the same time, not throw baby out with the bathwater here, and then say, okay, now what will AI let us do with that? And how can we kind of hypercharge that to sort of experience different things? One of my colleagues, Ira Greenberg, down at SMU, is doing some really interesting artwork with AI, and it's just he's sort of iterating through experiments so quickly that he's identifying what he wants to create faster, and is, I mean, he's doing amazing work if you want to check it out. But anyway, I feel like I'm kind of coming back to the same concept over and over here. But I think this is the core of what teachers need to be thinking about, which is you've got to redesign everything you're doing in your classroom to now go back to being sure what the fundamentals are, and focus less on the production itself.
Perfect. Thank you. And I throw it back to you for the third question.
Okay. So how do we develop a curriculum in the age of post-human that allows for our tools to have agency in art education? And honestly, the sub question here kind of tacks on to what you guys were just talking about, which says, how do we teach art in the digital age with AI? Should we continue teaching traditional art skills with conventional media, or is this obsolete? So how about, like, let's go back to Sherry with this first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about what both Isa and Glenn have been saying. And to scaffold first on what Isa was saying, we are in a situation where AI is allowing us, like photography and cinema and the computer and new media before it, to see what we've not seen before. And you're going to start to see a paradigmatic aesthetic shift. And I think we're seeing it already. There's artworks like Jason Salavan, who has made Totem, which is a giant animated GIF made with generative AI. And it's made out of 1,000 tiles and 5,226 English Wikipedia pages. And it could not be made without AI. And the use of AI is as important mechanically as it is as a part of the aesthetic. And people like Jason are changing the way art looks and how it's experienced. And um, this is what we are looking for. We're looking for the next where AI is going to bring us next in terms of 21st century art making. There's also BT, Genesis JSON, also blockchain and NFT. It's a piece of video art online that puts itself to sleep. So we're starting to see artworks we've never seen before. That's a part of our sampling culture, our DJ remix, mashup, appropriation culture that we're a part of. And our art education needs to be reflective of that reality of how we make and experience art. Art collecting is a total different situation. There's somebody named Beeple who sold an NFT for $69 million. How do you own an NFT and collect it? I mean, people are finding ways to do these things. And that's part of this paradigmatic shift that we're experiencing. And so how do we teach art? Do we teach conventional methods and use conventional materials? I hope so. That is my aspiration, that that's still important, and we still teach those types of experiences that make me feel that that's a part of being human. But what Manovich says, and I think is just absolutely true, is that what we do with art and technology, which is what I know about, is creative coding, that it's based on adjusting numbers, parameters, and variables in discrete sequences as operations, and that the AI is just taking over that creative coding and making art. That's all. And why not? Why can't the AI do that for us? And then we are free to either control the algorithm if we want more control as artists and code the algorithm ourselves, upload images into the AI, or simply control the text prompts that go into the AI, or curate the output of the AI. There's a variety of options for the artists to collaborate and co-create with the AI, and still have agency as an artist in the face of this new technology. And that's what I have to say about that.
Isa, do you want to follow up?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So I agree that AI will inevitably become a part of higher education and art education, whether you're a pessimist like myself, which I apologize for being so negative about a lot of this. It's not a personal attack on anyone. Those are just how I feel personally with my experiences with AI thus far. Um, but I also agree that as we create new curriculum as art educators, we must be mindful in communicating that AI can be analyzed critically in the way that it affects the experience of a work of art, or how it is conducive to the goal of what the art is trying to convey. How can we analyze that from a critical perspective? I think using AI for the sake of using AI gives it too much agency. And if we are intentional about our usage of AI in artwork as educators and as artists, that will kind of help with a lot of the gray area that we're kind of in right now. But I also think that, again, what do we actually want to teach? As Glenn was saying, what do we want to teach in our art education classrooms and with our pedagogical approaches? What do we want to convey to our students? That might include conventional media, or it might not, and that's up to the individual. But if AI is part of that, how can conventional media be used alongside that as well?
Glenn? Thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, a lot. I think this has been somewhat answered. I've been thinking I want to kind of get at a different sort of meta level about using AI, because I think we're just talking about AI as as a co-created tool, Sherry's talking about. And I'd like to talk about it as a classroom tool, right? And obviously, I've got a bit of bias because that's sort of what my company does. But I think about that a lot, and we think about that in our company. And a lot of people are creating AI tools to try to help us more broadly as instructors do what we do in the classroom, right? Tools. And we talked a little. I mean, Sherry brought up sort of some of these, like, tools that can help with assessment, tools that can have personalized experiences and chats with the students. Part of what the company that I'm part of does is tools that identify whether students are learning things or not, or their mental health and sentiment states. There are tools that can be used in K through 12 settings to help align curriculum with, standards, or to help create activities in the classroom sort of on the fly. There's just a host of different tools that are surrounding not just our agency as artists, but as instructors. And I think AI presents a lot of opportunity that way. It's still early, and a lot of, like, I think there's a lot of effort that's being pointed in the wrong directions as we experiment a bit with what to do in the classroom with AI. But I also think it's just the day-to-day job that we have as instructors is going to change significantly in the presence of these types of tools. And I just wanted to make sure we include that as part of this conversation.
I'd like to ask Isa a question. Isa, you say you're a skeptic of AI. What would it take to convince you to change your mind about it?
I think I would just like there to be some certainty regarding how AI will be affecting artists who are having their work sampled by these large language models, also the environmental ramifications of how the energy that all of this technology uses affects the world that we live in and how it's accelerating climate change at an unprecedented rate. I also want to know if it would even be possible to draw the line somewhere of when is AI just simulating human interaction and then taking away the joy of interacting with another human being. What it means to be human, I think, has a lot of impact on how we think about AI, and if we are using AI to do things as like having conversations with kids and assess their learning, what does that leave for us as teachers? And yes, we could reframe it in a way that it just supplements our instruction, but I don't know. I think I am yet to see a viewpoint that really has convinced me in those regards. I'm very much a skeptic, but I'm also not closed off from hearing other perspectives. I just keep thinking, but then this happens, and then all boils down to, but then what's the point of having everything automated? And what's the point? What are we left to do if everything is automated to be as efficient as possible?
Thank you.
There was another question in the chat. I think, Alan, for time's sake, I think let's skip question 4 and just kind of go to the Q&A with the audience. And the
Okay.
first one I'd like to start with is, Glenn, your question, do we still need instructors and teachers, or will we in the future? What do you all think?
I think that really comes back to what I was just talking about in response to Alan's question. I think there needs to be a more clear divide of what is something that a teacher needs to do, like, or should we be automating everything? Because then what's the point of really any profession if AI can take over every task to make it as efficient as possible? What is the point for us as human beings to have this thing taking over our lives? What is left for us to find meaning in? For me personally, as a pre-service art educator, I find a lot of meaning in connecting with my students and making them feel seen and heard in a personal manner. And if that is something that I can just automate, I don't want to do that because I feel like it's so central to my pedagogical approach that I'm just not interested in having a machine do that for me. That's not an attack on Glenn's company at all either. That's just, I feel like
No,
it's something that's so personal to me that I just wouldn't want to lose.
I don't disagree. So I will answer that from the the techno optimist perspective, but I think we're in agreement on this. As Susan notes in the chat, like face-to-face connection is everything. What sort of prompted us to develop the tool we have is, if you're familiar with Bloom's Two Sigma problem, like what we know is that people learn best with one-to-one teaching. That is the ideal. I mean, that's really you all as artists, right? I am not an artist. You all as artists know this. This is kind of the way. This is the way you've taught like since time began, right? This is how art has worked. And the problem is that higher education and modern education, the economics of that just simply makes that impossible. And we have growing class sizes and large classrooms. And I believe one of the things AI affords us is the ability to have more of that face-to-face interaction if you can use tools like it to empower instructors to have to take their time on more one-to-one instruction, right? That AI. So, all right, let me give you like quick example. What I mean by that is that if AI is engaging with students in the room in such a way that it lets the instructor know who in that room needs help at that moment in time and who is struggling and who is doing okay. If AI is able to create that sort of personal experience that Sherry was talking about, and at the same time, in that personal learning construct, is cueing the instructor for how they can do that one-on-one face-to-face interaction better. I believe that efficiency comes in the freeing up of time. The point is the freeing up of time. That if these tools allow us to have more time to do the thing that we think is more high impact instead of the rote things, then there is value all around. So to me, that's that, it empowers if it's done right, right? Like I think if you send a kid off to a room and say, here's an iPad, go talk to Conmigo and have it teach you, that's the dystopian world we all don't want to have happen. But if I have a student in the room who's chatting with an AI chatbot that then pings me as the instructor and says, hey, Isa is really struggling with this notion of posthumanism, go talk to her. Like, then instead of Isa being quiet and not raising her hand, which is what happens in our classrooms, right? Our classrooms are full of students who are thinking and doing things that we never even know, and AI can help alert us to that.
So I guess it really boils down to being intentional with our implementation of the technology in ways we can use it to supplement our own notion of what is core to what we want to get out of being a teacher, I guess then that makes a little bit more sense, but I'm still not sure I'm fully on board.
But don't you think we
Lisa
had
is
that
struggling with the notion of
conversation?
posthumanism.
Like we had that conversation when the internet came along and people were like, hey, kids aren't going to the library. And so they're not touching books and they can't figure things out. Like you don't remember that, Isa, but there are people on this call who were around when everyone thought, we were going to go to hell in a handbasket because now nobody goes to libraries and no one touches paper. And we figured out the best ways to, well, some of us figured out. I mean, not everybody's figured that out. But I do think that what you just described is the problem every time a new technology, when broadcast technology came about, that was what people had to wrestle with. When the printing press came about, that's what they had to wrestle with. Like it's the nature of new technology.
Yeah, I totally see that point. And then I also see in the chat, both Patty and other Glenn said that there is nothing rote about art education. And for me, my approach to being an art teacher is really personal and individualized for each student. And I think that, I don't know, I struggle to see a world in which I could use it in a way that makes it not just totally be impersonal. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not being a hater on purpose.
Okay, so let's open it up to everybody else here who's in the audience and just ask. I would like to ask if anybody has any questions that they would like to discuss based on this conversation. Are there any questions in the chat that I missed that I should go back to? I know people have been putting questions in the
Yeah,
chat.
the questions.
Okay, Patty?
Yeah, I have a question. Hi, everybody. I'm Patty Pent, Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Art educator, have been working with AI and actual art materials for a number of years now. And the real issue for me is how we are going to address the ethical concerns around data sets that the AI is using. And I could list about 11 different ethical issues from privacy to the bias in data sets. These need to be addressed, and it's very difficult because policymakers in countries cannot keep up with the companies that are, of course, robust and fully funded. So how do we address the ethical concerns? That's the work that I do and struggle with that question.
Who would like to take that one? Sherry?
Well, I don't know how to technically address ethics with the data sets, but I know what I've been dealing with here is real alarm for job loss for artists. Artists are really up in arms here and they're getting fired. And I pulled a printing industry report from 2024 on AI in the printing industry. And one CEO of a major printing company said, well, you know what used to take an artist 6 hours to sketch for me now takes seconds, with AI. And that's not the whole story. In the next interview, it was more described that, the AI gives a low res concept sketch that needs to be rebuilt, redrafted, refined for the specific client's needs, and is not good for a final rendering. And artists know that, so the quip by the CEO is definitely not the whole story. But it is happening in the CGI industry that artists are losing their jobs to AI, and that for us here is a big concern.
I would like to say, because I keep framing myself as a techno optimist, I think Patty is 100% right. I think everything she said is spot on. I think the issue here is the phrase I used earlier: the toothpaste is out of the tube, right? And so what we need to do is be very intentional about having those conversations around AI ethics. I mean, AI ethics should be the number one AI conversation that we're having today. And I mean, the government is having AI ethics conversations. Are they coming up with solutions? No, right? Like Adobe's got their AI solutions, and you can read about their provenance and other things that they're trying to do. But at the end of the day, this is a wicked problem, as they would say in Boston, right? This is a wicked problem, um, and I think the conversations around ethics should be leading that, right? Like, so I just want to say, like, I don't discount any of those things Patty said. I think that the challenge is whether or not we address them, this is going to keep marching forward. And so we need to aggressively stay ahead of it with our ethics conversations and strategies around, allowing artists to sort of own work and what that means, and, understanding bias and all those issues that she raised.
Can I just jump in here? I personally worry about this. I read an article headline just like yesterday with Trump entering the office in the United States. It was saying something about how many industries he's going to deregulate, and AI was one of them. And I think it's really difficult to know like where the government will go with this, knowing that big tech companies have so much control and they most likely won't necessarily care about the ethics as long as it's profitable, right? Like it depends. So I worry about that too. Isa, do you want to say anything about that with what Patty's comment was?
Yeah, I think that as long as it is profitable for companies to take shortcuts regarding ethics or to just ignore those sorts of conversations completely, it will continue to happen. And I think it's just very difficult to come to a general consensus or just an agreement altogether on what is ethical and what isn't, because everybody's coming from a different background and a different place of, okay, well, I'm worried about this issue, I'm worried about this. I don't really have a clear view of what the solution would be, and I think that is really at the core of why I am so skeptical about it. It all really boils down to ethics, like how much is too much? And that really permeates every single aspect of AI that I'm skeptical about. I don't know, and I wish I had a better answer.
I have a question here. Do you all think that certain types of regulations would be worthwhile in order to make sure that some of the discussions that we are having here um, do not really manifest itself where it is, the disadvantage is so great because once you start talking about profits, money, then it can influence everything else that's going on. So, do you think that some type of regulation should be put around AI and how it's used?
Was this to me?
I'm opening it up to the panelists. I mean, Isha, you can take a crack at it, but I want to hear from all three of you.
I don't really have any specific recommendations because I think, like I said, it's everybody's going to have a different view of what should be the limit. And you're right, when profit comes into it, it's human nature. People will want to do what benefits them and their company the most, or what will bring them the most revenue. And does it boil down to the individual at the end of the day? Do we just trust everyone really hard? Like, can we all promise really hard to be nice about it and to not steal from artists? I don't exactly have a concrete answer. Glenn or Sherry, if you guys have a different view, I'd love to hear it.
I'll go. President Biden in 2023 had gotten a lot of the major tech companies working with AI together and had them agree to certain guardrails in the ethical use of AI, but they were not enforceable. They were not like, hard regulation. So it's just sort of a promise. As Issa says, it's not, it's like not good enough. So yes, I would like to see some really strong regulation on the ethical use of AI. And the University of Cambridge has a center called SIR, for the study of existential risk, and they plan for the catastrophic fallout of AI. And I think we should have something like that in the US that really looks at and surrounds the potential of harm, with the use of AI and gets to a point of readiness. I haven't found that we have something like that going here.
Glenn, do you want to follow up?
Yeah, this is
like,
a thorny problem. I think it was the Department of Education just came out with a set of AI guidelines recently. And it's a moving target. That's why I don't even know, I there are commissions, like I said, there are reports, there are groups of people that have come together, but you're regulating, a thing that's just slipping through your fingers as quickly as you're trying to figure out how to grab it. Because the technology is literally advancing on a daily basis, certainly on a weekly basis. So there are new data sets being used and new tools and new algorithms. And some of these are in the US, but some are all over the world. And so even regulation in the United States is going to have a limited impact. And so, I don't have an answer. I mean, all I can hope is that if we continue to have conversations, and someone's point in the chat, I'm sorry, I don't remember who was talking about, like beginning with talking about AI ethics in our classroom, that if we just create critical consumers and users of AI, that may be all that we're able to do. And I'm not saying we shouldn't regulate AI. I think we absolutely should. I think AI ethics, like I said, I think it's the most important thing we need to think about with AI, but it's not going to be effective. I mean, it will be marginally effective. It's not going to solve any of these problems that we're talking about here. And so at some point, I think we need to really train people much in the same way that when you do a Google search and you see the result, how do you know whether, that's from, some, Russian content farm or from a person who wrote a real research paper? Like, we ultimately can only train better consumers of media and content to have critical language around that and a critical eye in the hopes that will ultimately sort it out.
One final just a concern of mine as I listen to all of this because I'm taking notes for my closing remarks. Um, how about privacy and data security concerns as it relates to AI? How do we control that?
I mean, there is some controlling of that in education. So I'll answer this first. That FERPA and COPA and the regulation that surrounds privacy in the classroom continues with AI. AI tools actually have to abide by those laws and those regulations in order to be used in a classroom. So if we in our classrooms, yeah, well, if we use any of these tools that does not conform to these, right, we are in violation of FERPA, right? Those kind of things. So I think there are some protections in there, um, but these tools ingest content pretty shamelessly, and so unless you explicitly are doing some serious work to prevent these tools from ingesting your content, that privacy is at risk, certainly.
Allan, I can kind of answer that too. I read a lot about data capitalism. Um, I mean, there are like new disciplines burgeoning out of studying this, right? Like, what is data capitalism? How is our data being used, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, yeah, there's no like real guardrails on it. I think the only thing that you could do is just not be online if you don't want your data to somehow be used, right? Like it's all being consumed all the time. So I don't know, and I don't know that the government, it's kind of like what you all were talking about regulating AI. Like I don't know that the government has enough, I wouldn't say power, but they aren't fast enough to get ahead of the data capitalism either, right? Like some of that is just speed with which tech keeps advancing. So anyway, I don't know if that answers it 100%, but that's how I feel. I've read about it. Yeah. Isa?
Yeah.
I know Amanda and I had this conversation fairly recently about how my research in social media and the attention economy, I just feel really uncomfortable with being complicit in the system, whether I like it or not, just by nature of existing so prominently on the internet. And where I'm at right now in just trying to work out how I feel about it and how to move forwards is there really won't be a way to think regulate it on a large scale in a way that is able to keep up with the ever-changing nature of AI itself. But becoming more critical consumers, as Glenn said, and realizing what's okay with us and having that drive how we intentionally interact with it, we can only hope that that's enough to just create a world that we are okay with living in.
Yeah. I think for time's sake, we should probably wrap up. We're at 4:04. Allan, I'll move it back to you because you have been preparing remarks for this. And I have a final slide I would like to put up as well.
Okay. For those of you who actually came in after the introduction, I'm Alan Richards, and I'm one of 3 InSEA North American World Counselors, and I am tasked with sharing the closing remarks. As I listen to our discussion here on AI, I am led to consider the advantages and disadvantages of AI in art education. Here are some of the top lines that I have here as far as advantages. Personalized learning. It will help personalize learning, effective assessment, creative assistance, access to diverse resources. For the disadvantage, I have here potential skill erosion, bias and lack of inclusivity, reduce human interaction, and of course, the last question I asked about privacy and data security concerns. As I also think about AI, there's some fear there as well, right? I also thought about my colleagues who fear the unknown. I am also reminded that fear is a powerful human emotion that can prevent us from exploring. Exploring is another human, natural human trait. And if we succumb to fear of the unknown, we will rob ourselves of the opportunity to be creative and innovative. AI is a new tool. And if we listen to many pundits, we can easily fear it. We should not fear AI, but embrace it and use it to advance our knowledge to improve the human condition, whatever that might be. On behalf of the InSEA North American World Counselors, Amanda Alexander, Anita Sinner, I want to thank the presenters, Sherry Mayo, Isa Obradovich, and Glenn Pratt for sharing their knowledge about AI with us today. I also want to thank you, all the participants, for attending this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. And here's the website to join if you're interested in becoming a member. And we also have a World Congress coming up this summer in the Czech Republic. So fun times. All right. Thank you. I'm going to stop
Thank you,
sharing.
everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone, for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks.